Greetings my little guzzlers. We're doing a bit of baking. Now we're going to actually attempt to make something gluten-free. Well, I say attempt, we've done it before, but this is, I've got a lot of coconut flour I want to use up, and so I had a look, and these are some nice cookies that we can make. They are coconut flour cookies with peanut butter and chocolate chips. So that's what we're going to make. Okay, you'll need your oven on at about 190, so preheat it at that. We need some baking sheets, I'll get them sorted in a bit. And then we're basically going to be using coconut flour, peanut butter, light brown sugar. Now if you wanted to make these paleo, which I'm not bothered about, if you want to make them paleo, then you could use like coconut sugar instead. But I've got all the light brown sugar, I've got some chocolate chips which are sort of chopped up a bit, I've got vanilla essence, ground cinnamon, salt, and some bicarbonate soda. Oh, and coconut oil if I didn't mention that. And that's, oh, and we want some eggs. And that's what's going to go into this. We have to be careful what is with coconut flour. It can be very heavy. It's quite absorbent. You quite often, when you're doing your baking with coconut flour, you can't just substitute coconut flour in, instead of plain flour. But you have to normally add extra eggs, and you need to be a bit careful on the quantities. So that's what we're going to make. So let's get baking. So I'm going to start now. I've given in and I'm using cups. Now that's partly because it's important you get the right quantity of coconut flour, and you've got to use a cupful, and with that cup you want to like loosely pack it in that cup, whereas everything else you might want to level it all off and pack it in. Don't do that with coconut flour because you'll end up with too much. So I've just succumbed and I'm using cups. So I've got a cup of light brown sugar, and I've got a cup of peanut butter. So I'm going to attempt, this is why we're doing it in a food processor, because obviously this is going to be a lot trickier to get this all mixed in together. So we're doing it in a food processor. So I'm just going to attempt to get all of that out of there. Okay, and then we'll add some coconut oil and start blending it. I've got sugar in there, I've got peanut butter. Now I'm going to add, how much is it? 4 tablespoons of coconut oil. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we're now going to do, he says dripping it everywhere, I'm now just going to blend all that together in that processor until it's all nicely and smoothly mixed together. Now, from time to time, I knew that was coming off, broke it earlier. From time to time, you might just want to scrape down around the sides, make sure, got them blades in there, they're wicked, these blades in here, I tell you. Just make sure you've got everything. Let me get a knife on that, just so we don't lose any. So you've got everything all in there, all blended together. It's actually blending quite well, but obviously we need to make sure it's all mixed in. So I'm now going to add 3 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, and I'm going to add 2 large eggs, and then we're just going to blend that together into a nice mix before we move on to adding the other ingredients. So now we're going to add half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of salt, and then we've got some baking soda here, a whole teaspoon of that. And what we're now going to do is we're just going to just briefly mix that in before taking our cup of coconut flour, and we're now just going to mix those together as well. Okay, now this will probably we want a couple of times stop and a good scrape down until it's all fully blended. So it's quite a stiff dough, and so I've transferred it into a bowl, and I've got a wooden spoon because my spatula is just too floppy. And what we're going to attempt to do is just basically mix those chocolate chips into that dough. So I'm just breaking it up and then trying to compact it together. I'm reluctant to get my hands in there because obviously that will start melting the chocolate, but I will get some gloves on for when we roll out our cookies, and I will give it a bit of another little mix by hand just to make sure we've tried to get that chocolate nice and evenly mixed. Now for the next thing you're going to want is some trays, some baking trays. Now I've made quite, I've sort of doubled up quantities here because I wanted to make plenty. This should potentially make about 30 odd cookies, okay, little small cookies. Okay, I mean you can make them bigger if you like. So you're going to need some baking sheets to do these onto. You don't have to worry about these rising and spreading. Okay, they're not going to spread an awful lot. So when we come to form them, we will spread them lightly by hand. So, like I say, I'm going to get myself some gloves for that final stage. I'm also going to get my baking mats ready. So, I'm going to just give this a final little mix together. You can see it looks quite oily because that's obviously that coconut oil in there. Okay. Oops, chucking chocolate on the floor. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take about a tablespoon size, roll it into a ball, and then press it out onto the baking sheet. And like I say, it shouldn't spread particularly, okay, but I've said things like that before, so I am leaving it obviously a little bit of a gap. And like I say, the aim is to make about 30 from this quantity, okay. So, and then what we will do is they will now go into the oven for about 7 minutes, basically until they start to look a bit golden around the edges, and then we're going to pull them out and we're going to then let them sort of rest for about 3 minutes before we transfer them to wire rack. So here's the first batch cooled, well partly cooled, and all I'm going to do now is just slip them onto the wire rack, and we'll let them cool a bit further because obviously they're still quite warm, the chocolate is still quite soft. You can see they're starting to go brown around the edges. Some of the smaller, thinner ones a little bit more done than the others, but that don't matter. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to leave it on that rack to cool. The other batch is in the oven, and we'll have a little taster later. That one's a bit soft, so there's that one. Right, so catch you when it's ready to eat one. So, second batch is out and they're on the rack cooling. This is one for the first. It's got a sort of sweet taste, but I wouldn't say it's like the sugar. Obviously you get a bit of chocolate. I think you are getting like a coconutty flavour there. Whether that's from the flour or more likely the oil, I don't know. But sort of soft on the inside, a little bit hard on the outside. They do harden up as they cool down. To begin with, I was a bit worried that I might not cook them, but I mean that's now quite firm. To be honest, I think I'd prefer like a more traditional chocolate chip, but on the other hand, if you need them gluten free, you can't treat yourself to those. Not unpleasant by any means. I think it's just a little bit of an acquired taste. I think that coconutty oily flavour is just a bit different. But there you go. Your gluten-free coconut peanut butter. Actually, it's the, I'm thinking about it, I think you're getting that peanutty flavour through. I think that's what it is actually, to be honest. So peanut and a chocolate chip cookies. Enjoy them. Can't say no to cookies, can you?